A book on the shelf is just paper. A book in your mind is power. Welcome to Season 1, Money and Mindset. We are here to rewrite your internal script. Let's decode.
Here's an uncomfortable truth most people never examine. Motivation feels like progress, but rarely changes who you become.
Most lives don't change because intentions change. They change when daily behavior is redesigned.
Today we are decoding the book Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Not as a book about habits, but as a blueprint for how behavior quietly shapes identity and how identity shapes everything else in life.
Okay, so let's dive right into that reframe because it's a huge one.
It really is.
When we want better results, in our health, our finances, business, our first instinct is to set a big, ambitious goal. We focus on that outcome.
Mm-hmm. The finish line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But James Clear's whole argument is that this goal-first approach is, it's fundamentally flawed, that it might actually be what's holding us back.
And that we need to shift our focus entirely away from the outcome and onto the systems that produce those outcomes.
So unpack that distinction for us, a goal versus a system.
Well, look, goals are absolutely vital for setting a direction. They're the destination on the map, your North Star. But the system is the vehicle that actually gets you there. It's the process you follow day in, day out.
Can you give us a concrete example?
Sure. If you're a coach, your goal is obviously to win the championship. But your system is everything that happens before the final whistle. It's how you recruit, how you manage your assistant coaches, how your team practices every single day.
The execution.
The goal is just the measurement at the end. The system is what you actually do. And Clear identifies four really fundamental problems with focusing only on that measurement.
And the first one is just a brilliant insight into survivorship bias, isn't it?
It is, because it forces you to ask a really uncomfortable question.
It is.
If success was just about setting a high goal, why doesn't everyone who sets that goal succeed? The thing is, winners and losers, they have the exact same goals.
Yes. Every team in the Tour de France wants to win. Every startup founder wants a billion-dollar exit.
Precisely. So if the goal is identical for everyone, the goal itself cannot be the differentiator. It has to be something else. It has to be the system.
And this is where the story of British cycling comes in. It's the perfect proof point.
It really is. For about 100 years, they were mediocre, is the polite way to put it.
Just one gold medal since 1908. Pretty much a century of disappointment.
And then in 2003, they hire a new performance director, Dave Brailsford. And almost overnight, everything changes.
So what did he do differently? He didn't just set a bigger goal, right?
No, in fact, he became obsessed with ignoring the goal. He focused entirely on redesigning the inputs. He called it the aggregation of marginal gains.
That sounds very technical. What does it actually mean?
It's the idea that if you could just make a tiny 1% improvement in every single thing you do, no matter how small it seems, those improvements will compound into something massive.
And we're not just talking about the obvious stuff like aerodynamics or training.
No. This went so much deeper. He had them test different massage gels to see which one led to faster muscle recovery. He had a surgeon teach the riders how to wash their hands properly to reduce the chance of getting sick.
He even had the inside of the team truck painted white.
Right, to spot little bits of dust that could compromise the finely tuned bikes. They figured out the exact pillow and mattress that led to the best possible night's sleep for each individual athlete. It was a total obsession with the system.
So they weren't looking for one giant breakthrough. They were chasing hundreds of tiny 1% advantages.
And it worked. Within just 5 years, they were dominating. At the 2008 Beijing Olympics, they won 60% of the available gold medals. They had broken records, won the Tour de France multiple times, because they made winning an inevitable byproduct of a superior system.
Okay, so that's the first problem with goals. The second one is something I think everyone has experienced. Achieving a goal is only a momentary change.
This is the crucial difference between treating a symptom and actually curing the disease.
Explain that.
If your goal is to clean your messy room, you can summon a burst of motivation, tidy everything up, and boom, goal achieved. The symptom is gone.
But the room doesn't stay clean, does it?
Never. Because if the underlying system, the sloppy habits of dropping clothes on the floor, not putting things away, remains the same, the room will inevitably revert to being messy. You treated the outcome, not the input. Lasting change only happens at the system level.
And the third problem, This one's more psychological. It's about how goals restrict our happiness.
This is a huge cognitive trap we all fall into. We tell ourselves, I'll be happy when I reach this goal. I'll finally be able to relax when I get that promotion.
We put happiness on the other side of an achievement.
Exactly. It creates this either-or conflict. You're either a success and you get to be happy, or you're a failure and you have to be miserable. But a systems first mindset completely changes that, because your satisfaction comes from the process itself. You can feel good anytime your system is running. The happiness is built into the doing, the showing up, not just the achieving. It brings satisfaction into the present moment.
Which connects directly to the fourth problem. Goals are often at odds with long-term progress. They create that yo-yo effect.
The marathon runner is the classic example. You train for months. Your entire life is structured around this one event. You cross the finish line, and then what?
You stop running.
The motivation just evaporates because the goal is gone. A goals-first mentality is about winning the game and then stopping. A systems-first mentality is about building a process that allows you to keep playing the game indefinitely. It's about continuous improvement, not a temporary victory.
So if goals are the problem and motivation is fleeting, we have to decode motivation itself. We tend to think of discipline as some kind of innate moral virtue.
But some people are just born with more willpower.
Right. But the book argues that this is largely an illusion, that our environment is a much bigger factor than our internal discipline.
And the Vietnam soldier study is, it's just a staggering piece of evidence for this.
Walk us through it.
So during the Vietnam War, research showed that up to 15% of U.S. soldiers had become dependent on heroin. It was cheap. It was easily accessible.
So the natural assumption back home was that they'd have a massive addiction crisis when these soldiers returned.
A catastrophic one. The typical relapse rate for heroin users who go through rehab and then return to their old context is around 90%.
But that's not what happened.
Not at all. It was the complete opposite. When the soldiers came home, only about 5% became re-addicted within a year. 9 out of 10 just stopped, almost overnight.
How is that possible?
The environment completely changed. In Vietnam, the cues were everywhere. The stress of war, the boredom, the social circles, the easy access. Back home, those specific powerful triggers were gone. The habit just sort of dissolved because the context that created it vanished.
So this shifts the entire focus away from heroic willpower
and onto the strategic design of your environment. What we call disciplined people are often just people who are better at structuring their lives to avoid tempting situations in the first place.
They're not fighting temptation all day.
No. They're engineering their world so they don't have to. They understand that the battle is usually won or lost before it even begins based on the cues in your environment.
We hear things like, just say no, but that implies resistance is the key strategy. That sounds exhausting.
It's an incredibly high friction strategy. And it fails because we're driven by something called cue-induced wanting. The research shows that even seeing a picture of cocaine for just 33 milliseconds that's too fast to consciously register can still trigger a compulsive craving in an addict's brain.
So the urge is automatic.
It's automatic. Once the habit is encoded, the craving follows the cue without any conscious thought. Trying to resist that with willpower, especially when you're tired or stressed, is a losing battle.
So the better strategy, the core strategy, is what Clear calls the inversion of the first law. Make it invisible.
Exactly. You don't fight the urge, you remove the trigger. You don't try to ignore the cookies on the counter. You put the cookies in an opaque container on the highest shelf in the pantry. You reduce your exposure to the cue.
And when the cue vanishes, the craving eventually fades.
It is nothing to latch onto. It's the difference between active resistance and passive engineering. And passive engineering always wins in the long run.
That brings us to what you call the real unit of change, our behavior. If outcomes are just a snapshot and motivation is a feeling, then what we get in life is really just a reflection of what we repeat.
It's as simple as that. The outcomes we see today, our net worth, our weight, our knowledge, they're all lagging measures of our habits.
A lagging measure. I like that.
Your current weight is a lagging measure of your eating habits from the past few months. Your net worth is a lagging measure of your financial habits from the past decade. You are literally what you repeat.
And this reframes how we should think about our current situation, doesn't it? It suggests we should focus less on our current results and more on our current trajectory.
That is the critical shift. Imagine two people. One is a millionaire, but they're spending more than they earn every single month. The other person is broke, but they've just started successfully saving $100 every month.
Who's in a better position?
The broke person.
Yeah.
Their trajectory is pointing toward financial freedom. The millionaire's trajectory is pointing toward bankruptcy. Time is an amplifier. It will multiply whatever you feed it. Good habits make time your ally. Bad habits make it your enemy.
To really understand how to build that positive trajectory, the book breaks down change into 3 layers, kind of like an onion.
Right. The outermost layer is outcomes. This is changing your results, losing the weight, publishing the book. It's where most people start.
Then the next layer in is processes.
Changing your habits and your systems. Implementing a new workout routine, starting a daily writing practice.
But the core, the deepest layer, is identity.
This is the most important one. It's about changing your beliefs, your worldview, your self-image, your judgments about yourself and others.
And most attempts at change fail because we start from the outside in.
Exactly. We try to create outcome-based habits. I want to lose 20 pounds, the outcome, so I will start going to the gym, the process. But the person trying to do this might still see themselves, their identity, as someone who isn't an athlete, someone who is lazy or inconsistent.
And that internal identity will eventually sabotage the process.
It always does. The more effective path is to work from the inside out. Start with identity-based habits. Focus first on who you wish to become.
And the example of the 2 people quitting smoking is so powerful here.
It is. One person is offered a cigarette and says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit."
What's wrong with that?
They still identify as a smoker. Their self-image is that of a smoker who is currently resisting an urge. That creates an internal conflict. But the other person says, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker."
The identity has already shifted.
The identity is shifted. The behavior not smoking is now just an expression of who they are. There's no internal conflict. Behind every system of actions, there is a system of beliefs. You can't maintain behaviors that are fundamentally in conflict with your self-image.
So the ultimate form of motivation isn't really motivation at all. It's when a habit becomes part of your identity.
It becomes intrinsic. The story of the man who stopped biting his nails is a perfect illustration. He tried willpower for years, and it never worked. Then one day he gets a professional manicure.
Okay.
And suddenly his hands look really good.
Yeah.
And he feels a sense of pride in them. He started to see himself as the type of person who has nice nails. And once that identity shifted, he stopped biting them effortlessly. The pride in his new identity was more powerful than the old compulsive habit.
So the goal isn't just to read a book. The goal is to become a reader.
Exactly. The goal isn't to run a marathon. It's to become a runner. Your behavior becomes a reflection of the person you believe you are.
And that identity doesn't just appear out of thin air. It's built.
It emerges directly from your habits. It's fascinating. The word identity actually comes from the Latin phrase essentitas, which means being, and identidem, which means repeatedly. Your identity is literally your repeated beingness.
Wow. So every action you take is like a vote for the type of person you want to become.
That's the perfect metaphor. Every time you choose to write a page instead of watch TV, you cast a vote for being a writer. Every time you go to the gym, you cast a vote for being an athletic person.
And you don't need a unanimous vote on day one. You just need to win the election over time.
Exactly. Small habits are so meaningful because they provide the evidence. They're the proof you offer yourself that you are becoming this new person. This leads to a very simple 2-step process for changing your identity.
What's step 1?
Decide the type of person you want to be. And you can do this by working backward from your desired outcomes. Ask yourself, who is the type of person that gets this result? The person who is financially free is probably patient, disciplined, and a long-term thinker.
At step 2.
Prove it to yourself with small wins. Cast those votes day after day. It's a feedback loop. Your habits shape your identity, and then your new identity makes it easier to stick with your habits.
So if these small habits are the real unit of change, we need to understand how their power accumulates. This is where the idea of compounding comes in, but applied to self-improvement, not just finance.
Right. And the math is truly staggering. If you get just 1% better each day for a year, you'll end up 37 times better by the time you're done.
37 times, not 365% better.
No, because it compounds. But the inverse is just as powerful and, frankly, terrifying. If you get 1% worse each day for a year, you decline nearly down to 0.
That's why one day of eating poorly or skipping the gym doesn't feel like a big deal.
The impact is negligible in the moment, but the long-term trajectory is catastrophic. It's like a plane taking off from LA headed for New York. If the pilot adjusts the heading by just 3.5 degrees south, no one on the plane would notice at first, but they'd end up in Washington, D.C. instead of New York.
A tiny deviation in the system, compounded over distance, results in a completely different destination.
And this applies everywhere. Knowledge compounds. The more you read, the more mental models you have, which makes it easier to understand the next thing you learn. Productivity compounds. When you automate a task, you free up mental energy for more complex problems.
And negative things compound just as silently.
Oh, absolutely. Stress is a perfect example. A little bit of daily stress from traffic or a difficult colleague seems manageable. But compounded over years, it turns into chronic health problems. Negative thoughts compound into a distorted worldview. The more you tell yourself you're not good enough, the more you filter reality to find evidence that confirms it.
This compounding effect is why it's so hard to start a new habit. Because in the beginning, the results are invisible. It feels futile.
This is what Clear calls the plateau of latent potential. We expect progress to be linear. We work hard for a few weeks and see no change, so we get discouraged and quit.
We fall into the valley of disappointment.
We do. But the work wasn't wasted. It was just being stored. The analogy of the ice cube is perfect. If you have an ice cube in a room that's 25 degrees and you slowly raise the temperature, 26, 27, 28, nothing seems to be happening.
The effort feels pointless.
But then you hit 32 degrees and you get a breakthrough. The ice begins to melt. The change wasn't sudden. It was the result of all that stored energy being released.
So what the world calls an overnight success
is just the moment the compounding finally becomes visible. It's the stonecutter who hits a rock 100 times without a single crack. Then on the 101st blow, it splits in two. It wasn't that last hit. It was the accumulation of all the hits that came before.
There's a real neurological reason for this too, right? It's not just a metaphor, Hebb's law.
Neurons that fire together wire together. It's the foundation of how our brains learn. Every time you repeat an action, you strengthen the neural pathway associated with it. The connection between the neurons literally gets more efficient.
So our brains physically change to make the habit easier.
They do. Scientists can see this. London taxi drivers have to memorize this incredibly complex map of the city, and studies show they have a significantly larger hippocampus, the part of the brain for spatial memory, than the average person. Their brains adapted to the demands of the habit.
So habits form based on frequency, not just time.
Frequency is everything. The goal is to reach automaticity, where your non-conscious mind takes over, freeing up your conscious brain to focus on other things. That's the real power of repetition.
And since we know motivation is unreliable, the ultimate goal is to design our lives to make good habits inevitable. The story of Victor Hugo writing The Hunchback of Notre Dame is a classic case of this.
A perfect one. He had a huge deadline looming, but he kept getting distracted, procrastinating.
A familiar feeling.
So he came up with a radical plan. He had his assistant lock away all of his clothes, leaving him with nothing but a large, shapeless shawl.
So he couldn't go outside.
He literally couldn't leave the house without looking ridiculous. He used what's called a commitment device. A choice he made in the present that locked in his future behavior. He made writing the path of least resistance.
You're essentially outsourcing your willpower to a system that you're past, more disciplined, self-designed.
And the most powerful systems are automated. The cash register is a great historical example. Before it was invented, employee theft was a huge problem for shopkeepers.
But the cash register changed that.
John Henry Patterson, its inventor, didn't try to change the morality of his employees. He just changed the system. The machine automatically locked the cash inside after every transaction. It made stealing nearly impossible. It made the ethical behavior automatic.
Which suggests the highest leverage actions are often one-time choices that automate dozens or hundreds of future good behaviors.
These are behavioral gold. Buying a good mattress is a one-time choice that automates better sleep for years. Setting up an automatic transfer to your savings account is a one-time choice that automates good financial habits for decades.
Turning off notifications on your phone.
A brilliant one-time action that protects your focus from thousands of future interruptions. Every decision you can automate is mental energy you get back to solve novel problems.
Okay, let's get into the mechanics. The book is built around this 4-step habit loop, which is the foundation for all behavior.
It's the neurological feedback loop our brain runs constantly. The 4 steps are cue, craving, response, and reward.
And you can split that into a problem phase and a solution phase.
Right. The problem phase is the cue and the craving. The cue is the trigger, the bit of information that predicts a reward is coming, your phone buzzing on the table, for instance.
And that leads to the craving.
The craving is the motivational force. It's the desire to change your internal state. You don't actually crave checking your phone. You crave the relief from boredom or the hit of social validation it might provide.
Then we get to the solution phase,
which is the response and the reward. The response is the actual habit picking up the phone and scrolling. And the reward is what satisfies the craving. The funny video or the new like on your photo, that reward teaches your brain, hey, that was good. Let's do that again next time we see that cue.
And from this loop, Clear derives the 4 laws of behavior change. The first is, make it obvious.
This is all about engineering your environment. Since so many of our habits are unconscious, the first step is just to become aware of them. But the real tool here is the implementation intention.
Which is a fancy way of saying,
Give your habit a time and a place. We often think we lack motivation when what we really lack is clarity. Don't just say, I want to meditate more.
be specific.
Be very specific. The formula is, I will behavior at time and location. So I will meditate for 1 minute at 7 a.m. in my kitchen. Studies show this specificity dramatically increases the odds you'll follow through.
And you can build on existing habits using habit stacking.
This leverages a psychological principle called the Diderot effect, where one action creates a chain reaction of other actions. The formula here is, after current habit, I will new habit.
So after I pour my morning cup of coffee, I will sit down and meditate for 1 minute.
Exactly. The old established habit becomes the cue for the new one. And again, the cafeteria study shows just how powerful designing the environment for obviousness can be.
Tell us about that one.
A doctor named Anne Thorndike wanted to improve the eating habits in a hospital cafeteria without talking to anyone. She didn't use posters or emails. She just changed the choice architecture.
What'd she do?
She had the staff add bottled water to every single drink station in the room. Before, it was only in the main refrigerators with the soda.
So she just made water more visible.
That's all. In 3 months, soda sales dropped by over 11%, and water sales shot up by more than 25%. She made the good choice, the obvious choice.
Okay, that leads to the second law, make it attractive. This gets into dopamine and the science of desire.
Right. We used to think dopamine was the chemical of pleasure, of liking something. But we now know it's the chemical of anticipation, of wanting.
The desire is the engine.
The desire is the engine. Your dopamine levels spike before you perform the action in anticipation of the reward. That surge of dopamine is what motivates you to act. Our brains are literally built to chase rewards, not just enjoy them.
And this is why modern temptations are so powerful. They're what the book calls supernormal stimuli.
It's an evolutionary mismatch. Our brains evolved in an environment of scarcity. Now we live in an environment of abundance, and companies have engineered products to be hyper-palatable.
Like junk food.
Food scientists literally engineer the bliss point of salt, sugar, and fat to maximize that dopamine anticipation. Social media feeds are bottomless, using variable rewards to keep you scrolling. They're designed to be irresistible to our ancient brains.
So how do we use this principle for good habits?
We use temptation bundling. You pair an action you want to do with an action you need to do. The student who hacked his exercise bike so that Netflix would only play if he was pedaling at a certain speed is the perfect example.
He bundled the thing he wanted, watching Netflix, with the thing he needed, exercise.
And made the necessary habit much more attractive.
Which brings us to the third law. Make it easy. This seems to be about fighting our brain's natural laziness.
It's the law of least effort. Our brains are wired to conserve energy. Given 2 options, we will naturally gravitate towards the one that requires less work. The more friction there is between you and a good habit, the less likely you are to do it.
So we have to reduce that friction.
We have to reduce it dramatically. Think about Japanese lean production in manufacturing. They became incredibly efficient not by telling workers to work harder, but by redesigning the factory floor to eliminate every single wasted motion. Addition by subtraction.
How does that apply to daily life?
A meal delivery service makes eating healthy easy by reducing the friction of grocery shopping, planning, and cooking. Amazon's one-click ordering reduced the friction of online shopping, and, well, we know how that turned out.
We can also prime our environment to make future actions easier.
Absolutely. Setting out your gym clothes the night before. Chopping vegetables for the week on a Sunday. It's about resetting a room, not just after the last action, but in preparation for the next desired action.
This law also introduces the 2-minute rule, which is a gateway to bigger habits.
This is so important. When you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. Read every day becomes read 1 page. Do yoga becomes take out my yoga mat.
The point isn't the outcome. The point is mastering the art of showing up.
You have to standardize before you can optimize. The 2-minute habit is the entrance ramp. Once you're on the highway, it's much easier to keep driving. But the hardest part is often just getting started.
Finally, the 4th law. Make it satisfying. This is what closes the loop and makes us repeat the behavior.
and it's governed by the cardinal rule of behavior change. What is immediately rewarded is repeated. What is immediately punished is avoided.
The problem is that we live in a delayed return environment.
Exactly. Our brains evolved in an immediate return environment. You hunt the animal, you eat. You see the lion, you run. The feedback is instant. But in modern society, the rewards for good habits are often delayed.
The benefits of going to the gym today won't show up for months. The cost of eating a donut is delayed for years.
But the reward of eating the donut is immediate. And in the moment of decision, the immediate reward almost always wins. It's a phenomenon called time inconsistency. We value the present more than the future.
So we have to find a way to give ourselves an immediate reward for good habits.
We have to engineer immediate reinforcement. When health workers in Pakistan were trying to get people to wash their hands, it didn't stick until they introduced a premium soap that smelled great and lathered nicely. That immediate sensory pleasure was enough to make the habit satisfying.
And this is especially important for habits of avoidance, like not spending money.
Because there's no natural satisfaction in not doing something, so you have to make the avoidance visible. If you resist an impulse purchase, immediately transfer the money you would have spent into a savings account named Trip to Europe.
You see the balance go up. That's the immediate reward.
It provides immediate positive feedback, reinforcing the identity of someone who saves money. Eventually, the intrinsic rewards, a feeling of control, less anxiety take over. But in the beginning, that immediate satisfaction is critical.
So let's apply this framework. When we think about work and productivity, what's the key leverage point?
It boils down to mastering what Clear calls decisive moments. These are the tiny choices that act as a fork in the road for your whole day. The moment you get home from work, do you put on your running shoes or do you collapse on the couch? That one choice dictates the next few hours.
The habit is the entrance ramp to the highway.
That's the perfect way to put it. And the 2-minute rule is your tool for getting on that ramp. Your goal might be to write a 10-page report, but your 2-minute starting ritual is just to open the document and write one sentence. You ritualize the beginning of the process.
But there's a danger in focusing too much on the metrics of productivity, right? Goodhart's law.
A huge danger. The law states, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. If your company starts rewarding engineers based on the number of lines of code they write, you'll get a lot of long, inefficient code.
You get what you measure.
You get what you measure, and it's often not what you actually want. The goal is meaningful work, not just looking busy. The goal is actual health, not just a number on the scale. The system can be gamed if you lose sight of the deeper purpose.
Now, in learning and knowledge, our social environment plays a massive role in making habits attractive.
We are herd animals. We want to fit in. And we tend to imitate 3 groups in particular: the close, the many, and the powerful.
The close being our friends and family.
Yes. Your habits are likely to be the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. If your friends all read voraciously, it's very attractive to become a reader.
The many is the broader culture.
And the powerful are the people with status who we look up to. This is why one of the most effective things you can do to build better habits is to join a culture where your desired behavior is the normal behavior. You want to get fit? Join a running club or a CrossFit gym. The shared identity pulls you along.
What about money? How do we see financial outcomes as a consequence of these systems?
Money is the ultimate lagging measure of your financial habits. And the single most powerful lever here is automation. It's a one-time action that solves a recurring problem.
Because it removes the decision point.
It completely removes it. By setting up an automatic transfer to your savings or investment account the day you get paid, the money is gone before you even have the chance to spend it. You don't have to use willpower every month to decide to save.
You're using a system to defeat time inconsistency.
You are designing a system where the path of least resistance is the financially responsible one. It makes saving effortless and spending require conscious effort, which is the exact opposite of how most people's financial lives are structured.
So this brings us full circle to the title of this deep dive. Poor people rely on motivation. Rich people build systems. Let's decode that phrase.
And it's critical to understand this isn't about income. It's not about being literally rich or poor. It describes 2 completely different modes of living.
The first mode, relying on motivation, is reactive. It's emotional.
It's waiting for the mood to strike. It's depending on bursts of inspiration. It's treating symptoms, focusing on outcomes, and constantly battling friction. It's exhausting and ultimately ineffective because motivation is a finite resource.
And the second mode, building systems, is designed. It's structural.
It's about pre-designing your behavior. It's about removing friction for good habits and adding friction for bad ones. It's about optimizing your environment so that the desired choice is the easy choice. It focuses on trajectory, knowing that your quality of life is simply a lagging measure of the quality of your systems.
The core insight, then, is that the problem is rarely you. The problem is the system you're in.
That's it. And you have the power to change that system. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems.
Your life doesn't change because you want it to. It changes because your systems quietly pull you in a direction.
And over time, those systems become your identity, and your identity becomes your reality.
If this conversation helped you see behavior more clearly, then the decoding is working.
And if you want to keep understanding life beneath the surface, one book, one idea at a time, subscribe to Decoded by Morrow.
We don't motivate change. We decode how change actually happens.
You've reached the end of this exploration, but not the end of the idea. Let it echo. Let it integrate. And when you're ready for the next step, return to Decoded by Morrow. Wisdom is a journey, not a conclusion. Let's decode.